Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Ceccarelli, founder of the It's Time To organization, and thank you for tuning in to part 2 of It's Time to Talk. Part 2 deals with what you as a parent can do in dealing with your child's anxiety and depression if they've been bullied at school and now they're planning on returning to school. It also talks about what you as a parent can do as far as reaching out to the school and the proper steps to take in contacting school authorities. So let's join the conversation we had just a few days ago. I hope you find this segment informative. So Arlene, off camera, you and I had a brief discussion about a specific situation where if your child is being bullied in school or had been bullied in the past, and now being that they're home and not in school, it's kind of been a safe situation for them. But with them having to go back to school and confront that situation, what would be the advice you give to parents knowing your child had been bullied, kind of got over that situation by the lack of schooling now, but they're going to be going right back into it in the next 2 months?
Well, I think a couple things. I think talking to your student about, will this happen again? You know, we like to think that bullying is removed when kids are removed from school, but unfortunately with social media, there isn't a big escape for kids. So a lot of times, unfortunately, it follows them into the home as well. It's great if it has stopped during this time period, but what type of tools have we been able to equip that student with through this process? The important thing is, which is part of the title of the organization, is it's time to, and it's time to talk. It's always time to tell someone, to let them know. Because if you don't tell, there's no way that someone can intervene to help stop the problem. A lot of times when the aggressor knows that adult eyes are on the situation, it reduces the opportunities for it to occur. So if they're letting teachers know, counselors know, anyone in the building, so that as many eyes are on that as possible. You know, we talk about the idea of support in numbers, and you know, we used to use the language of whether students are bystanders and now upstanders. If they have friends that can be of support to them, to be their upstanders, so that they're walking in the halls with other people, so that they know who they're going to be with at lunch. You know, talk about all those concrete plans so that the student feels a little more empowered and prepared for when they go back into that situation. And then giving them some tools to maybe address when the bullying is occurring. What can I do in those situations at that time if it's occurring? But the important thing is they have to be willing to tell.
Yeah, I think a big piece too is if there are other kids that can, like you say, stand up to the bully. And so if you can advocate for kind of other kids to join your force, like you said, there's safety in numbers, but it really is helpful when other kids stand up to the bully and say, well, that's not okay. That's not what you're doing. It's not okay. It's exactly. Amazing how powerful that is. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, sometimes what we see a lot is that bullying obviously can occur anywhere, but it can really occur within sports teams. Mm-hmm. And so it's really when you get the kids who are the captains, or, you know, even the popular kids at school, when you get them to stand up and say, nope, we're not going to allow that, exactly. It's amazing how much improvement you get. Yes. So really building that team, and, you know, that's one of the biggest things that I think can be helpful. Mm-hmm.
So to elaborate on that question a little bit, does each school have a protocol to follow? Is there a state mandated protocol that schools must adhere to in a bullying situation? How does that work?
Well, school staff have to go through an online training that talks about bullying, but then there is a reporting process to the state if a bullying incident has been substantiated. I know that different schools have different protocols in addition to that, but certainly it is something that I think is being addressed more in the last few years than it had been previously, particularly with the social media issue, because it's just created more bullying situations.
Oh, it's been horrible.
Yes, and schools, I think each school has their individual in-house protocol, but they are mandated by the Ohio Department of Education to respond to incidents of bullying. All schools have a school safe helpline or a school helpline that students can call. You can make anonymous reports through your school helpline to make people aware. Once the district gets that notification, they contact the building level principal, who then in turn often contacts the counselor. And so we start looking into that situation, but the principal is obligated to also investigate.
That's great. I didn't
realize
know that was there. I wonder if students and kids know that. I mean, because when you look and you hear about the suicide rates increasing in adolescents, and even now it's increasing in those even 8 to 11 years of age, which is really, really scary. One of the biggest factors that they think is that social media, because it's increased the bullying. So kids used to be able to go home from school and then the bullying would stop. But like you said, now it's 24/7 because of the social media, so the kids can't get away from it. So I'm so glad to hear that the schools have that. I wasn't aware of it.
And we've had a number of students who have used the school helpline throughout the district and that have made calls and reported when there have been concerns.
That's great.
Do you think that it's more often that is used with maybe a little bit older kids and more of the social media kinds of bullying versus like the younger kids and the playground bullying?
Probably. I would not know
Yeah.
about the younger kids at the elementary level. I think, of course, probably more so with the older kids because they can copy the number down themselves.
Right.
It's posted throughout the buildings, more so than what a younger kid would be able to do.
Do you know, how aware are the students of that?
I think that might be varies by district.
Oh,
I
sure.
feel like students are
I
pretty
just think that's
aware
so
of
great.
it.
I didn't know about it.
I feel like in our particular building at Watts, there's a sign in every classroom.
Oh,
So
great.
I feel like the exposure is there. We make students aware of that when we do grade level meetings and talking to students. But like I say, that varies by district.
But you said every district has it?
Yes, a helpline.
Yeah, on your website.
You know, in giving my presentations last year, I would have multiple students come up to me after each presentation. And one of the biggest concerns they had was calling out the bully because they felt that it just exacerbated the problem and that kids would say, hey, you told on me and I'm going to bully you even more. But I think what I'm hearing is, and what my advice has always been, is it's not acceptable. We cannot allow bullying to occur to a point where the suicide rates are going up every year. 8 to 11-year-olds has tripled in the last decade, the number of suicides. Now, obviously, they're not all attributable to bullying, but it certainly plays a major part in kids' self-esteem and their anxiety and depression with going to school and being harassed on a regular basis. So the best advice I think we as a panel could offer would be to pay attention to your child, talk to them frequently. If they seem like something's not right at school, don't be afraid to ask them if they're being bullied in school or having a bad experience. If they are, then they have to reach out to the school counselor. That should be the first call, correct? Or the school principal.
I would say find out from the student who's a trusted adult for you at school.
Yeah.
Because in some buildings, it's the direct teacher or an advisor. It may be the school counselor, but the student may feel more comfortable with talking to that trusted adult.
Sure.
And then that adult will in turn make sure that people who should know about that situation
But the
as
parents,
well.
the parents need to be the biggest advocate for the child in a situation, especially in a younger child that may not be able to or doesn't know the right avenue to take.
I think sometimes there's a concern that kids won't tell their parents. I think, obviously, some parents don't like to do this, some parents do, but going through phones, it's obviously pretty amazing what you'll find going through an adolescent phone, some good and bad. But the other thing is that there's apps out now, so if you're a parent who doesn't like to go through your child's phone because you feel like that's invading their privacy, there are apps out now that they scan through text messages and social media sites, and they look for key words. And if those words pop up, then they will just, that snippet of the text or that snippet of what's on the social media, they'll push that to the parent's phone. And so it's a way to still let your child have some privacy, but also let you know if there's something going on that they need help with.
So in a clinical situation, Lisa, do you see many cases of children coming to you that have been bullied? And what are they specifically dealing with in their own minds in a bullying situation?
I have to say, when it comes to bullying, for the younger kids, it's frequently things on the playground. And when we talk about having people that will stand up with them, a lot of the kids that I see that are bullied are also kids that don't have solid friend circles. And so that's a difficult thing for them because they don't see themselves as having those people. So then we have to work a lot on that. There are good tools out there. I have a great book that I use with kids called Simon's Hook. And it's like 8 different ways to respond to bullying. And so I work with that on those things. With the older kids, it's generally parents with the older kids who bring it to me because it's a social media bullying thing that the child has brought to them or they discovered on their child's phone. And so I believe that a lot of the higher suicide rate with the kids from 8 to 11 is because we are giving them phones and they are emotionally not ready for them. So I do a lot with kids about, and teens about what I call the emotional IQ, learning to refrain. Because sometimes if you just don't respond, that child, the bully, will move on. Because they're not getting what they want from you. They're not getting the feedback. And their kids and even adults, our instant response when something comes in is to respond. I mean, we're probably all guilty of it. And that's generally not the best response. We usually need to give ourselves time. And so trying to work with kids and teach them to have a little bit more emotional IQ, a little less impulsivity, ask for help. But I see it in a very different way depending on the age group.
What do you think about, so I am a huge proponent of kids getting involved in some kind of extracurricular activity, so it gives you a friend group and it gives you an you're automatically connecting over that sport or that club or theater, and it kind of automatically builds you this group, of camaraderie, and a lot of times it gives you self-confidence. And so I feel like that sometimes can help with bullying too because it gives you your group. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think that unfortunately the way school extracurricular activities work is some of the kids that have the more difficult time making friends, there are also not school extracurricular activities for them. I think a lot of, I refer a lot of kids that struggle socially to a martial art. And a lot of kids with anxiety and ADHD will very much benefit from martial arts because it's very empowering and it is very much centering. But that's not generally something that we would offer in school. So then those kids are finding a social circle that's not necessarily at their school. And it would be nice if there was a little bit more balance, at least from my perspective, of what is available to kids after school. We tend to hit certain groups only. So music, sports, and then there are other clubs, but they don't nearly build the camaraderie that because obviously if you're in a sport, you're practicing every day. But if you go to French club, that's once a month.
Right.
But I think it is really important. They have to have something, and I really advocate it in middle school to be picking something because I think especially in high school, it is incredibly important to have an extracurricular activity that will help you identify with a group of kids especially in some of the larger high schools.
It gives you some self-confidence too, which I think bullies tend to pick on the kids that are
Right.
less confident. And so if you're building self-confidence and self-worth and knowing that you're good at something, and then that also helps with the social aspect of learning how to make friends and learning how to be part of a group, which can all decrease bullying just in the way the child presents themselves. But
So again, if your child is being bullied, make sure you're their biggest advocate. Make sure that you are reaching out to the school and letting the school know what your child is telling you. Also remember, your child may not tell you everything. So be attuned to the behavioral changes that your child may be going through. That may be the only warning you have.